He sat at the corner table of the small cafe, his eyes fixed on the door like it held his entire world behind it. Every minute, he glanced up, hoping, waiting. The untouched coffee on the table had gone cold, but his heart was still warm with nervous anticipation. People came and went, laughter filled the air, but for him, time moved painfully slow. The waitress smiled softly as she refilled his cup, sensing his anxious energy. "She come," she said kindly, but he only nodded, gripping the handle tighter. Lost in his thoughts, that had been years since he'd seen her as childhood best friend, who suddenly disappeared one rainy evening without saying goodbye. Now, after all this time, she had agreed to meet him again. No messages, no calls, just this one meeting. But as the clock ticked, doubts started to creep in. Maybe she changed her mind. Maybe she was never coming. Then suddenly, the bell above the door chimed softly. He looked up, heart pounding, but it wasn't her. Just as he was about to leave, a young girl from another table walked over, clutching a small letter. She leaned in and whispered, her voice trembling, "She's outside. She's scared you won't like her anymore." His world froze. Every unanswered question, every lonely night came rushing back in one heartbeat. And in that moment, he realized this meeting wasn't just about the past. It was about forgiveness, truth, and a love that never truly ended. His heart raced as he stepped outside, searching through the soft drizzle that had started to fall. The streetlights blurred in the rain, and for a moment, he thought she was gone again. Then he saw her standing by the corner, her hands trembling as she tried to gather the courage to look up. She wore a simple gray coat, her hair slightly damp, and even from a distance he could see the uncertainty in her eyes. The years hadn't erased her familiar presence, but something in her looked heavier, like she carried stories she never meant to tell. He took a slow step forward, afraid any sudden movement might scare her away. Memories of their childhood rushed back, the laughter, the promises, the day she left without a word. He had waited for answers for so long that now, standing just a few feet apart, he didn't even know what to say. She glanced up, and their eyes met for the first time in years. There was no anger, just quiet recognition of the pain that had kept them apart. The sound of a passing car broke the silence, and she turned her gaze toward the ground. "I didn't think you'd come," she said softly, her voice almost lost in the wind. He wanted to ask her why she left, what happened, but something in her expression told him it wasn't time yet. And before he could speak, she whispered, "There's something you need to know, but not here." He followed her through the quiet streets, the sound of rain softly echoing between them. Neither spoke, but the silence carried everything they were too afraid to say. She stopped in front of an old bookstore, one they used to visit as kids, now faded and nearly forgotten. Inside, the scent of old paper filled the air, and she finally turned to face him. Her eyes were tired but honest, holding something she'd been carrying for far too long. "I didn't disappear because I wanted to," she began, her fingers tracing the edge of a dusty bookshelf. "That night, everything changed. My father lost everything, and we had to leave before sunrise. I tried to write to you, but," she hesitated, "your letters never reached me." He froze. He remembered writing those letters, hundreds of them, each one filled with questions and hope. But she never replied. He clenched his hands, trying to steady his voice. "I thought you forgot me," he said quietly. "I thought what we had didn't matter anymore." Her eyes softened, but before she could respond, a sudden noise came from the back of the store. Someone else was there. She tensed, glancing toward the sound, her face turning pale. "We shouldn't be here," she whispered urgently. Confused, he looked around, but she was already moving toward the door. "Who's there?" he called out. No answer, just the echo of footsteps fading deeper into the shadows. Something told him this wasn't just about lost love anymore. He froze, his pulse quickening as the dim lights flickered. The sound came again, slow, deliberate footsteps from behind the old shelves. She clutched his arm, her eyes wide with fear. "We have to go," she whispered, but he could tell there was more behind her panic than just the sound. He took a cautious step forward, calling out again, "Who's there?" His voice echoed through the quiet store, but only silence answered. The tension hung heavy between them, broken only by the creak of the wooden floor. She tugged at his sleeve, urging him toward the door. "You don't understand," she said, trembling. "I didn't just leave because of my family. Someone was watching us. Even back then." Her words sent a chill through him. "Watching us?" he repeated. "Why?" She shook her head, her voice barely steady. "Because of something my father was involved in. Something I was never supposed to know." Before he could ask more, a shadow moved across the back wall. He turned sharply, catching a glimpse of a figure slipping through the narrow hallway. Instinct took over, and he started after it, but she grabbed his hand. "Please," she begged. "If you follow him, everything will change." But it was too late. The curiosity, the years of unanswered questions, all of it pushed him forward. The moment he stepped into the dark hallway, a door slammed behind him. The lights went out completely, and her voice echoed faintly through the silence, filled with fear and something else, regret. The air inside the hallway felt thick, like the darkness itself was alive. He reached out, searching for the wall, but his hand brushed against something cold metal. A faint clicking sound followed, and a dim light flickered on overhead. To his shock, the narrow hall opened into a small hidden room filled with old files, faded photographs, and a single name scrawled across the wall, his own. His chest tightened. Why would his name be here? He stepped closer, scanning the papers. They weren't random. They were Record's letters, notes, even pictures from years ago, the same ones he thought he'd sent her. Each one had been intercepted, stamped with an unfamiliar symbol. His head spun. Someone hadn't just kept them apart. Someone had made sure they stayed that way. Suddenly, a voice came from behind him. Now you see why I didn't want you here. He turned sharply at Whizzer. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with guilt. They were watching both of us, she said quietly. Your father knew something, and mine tried to hide it. He stared at her, disbelief flooding through him. My father? Before she could answer, a sharp thud echoed from outside the room. The lights flickered again, and she grabbed his hand. They found us, she whispered. If we don't leave now, they'll take everything. But his mind was spinning questions, fear, and the haunting truth that their past wasn't just a love story anymore. It was a secret someone had tried to bury forever. They ran through the narrow alley behind the bookstore, the rain falling harder now, mixing with the sound of their footsteps. She led the way, clutching a small folder she had taken from the secret room. When they finally stopped under the glow of a flickering streetlight, she opened it with shaking hands. Inside were documents, old letters, and a faded photograph his father and hers. Standing side by side, my father tried to protect yours, she said breathlessly. They discovered something about the company your family built, money stolen, lives ruined. When your father refused to hide it, mine was threatened. That's why we had to disappear. His chest tightened as he looked at the photo again. All these years, he whispered, I thought you left me, but you were saving me. Before she could respond, a dark car pulled up across the street. The same shadowy figure from the bookstore stepped out, his face hidden beneath a hood. She froze. He's one of them, she whispered. He destroyed the letters, and he killed my father. The man took a step forward, but instead of attacking, he threw a small envelope toward them. It landed in a puddle, half soaked but still sealed. Inside was a single note. Asterisk, the truth was never between your fathers. It was about you, too. Asterisk, they stared at each other. Realization dawning slowly, everything had been planned, to keep them apart for a reason far deeper than either could imagine. The truth they thought they'd uncovered was only the beginning. He stood there, holding the soaked envelope, his heart pounding with a strange mix of fear and relief. The rain had slowed, but everything around them felt heavier, like the world had been holding its breath for this moment. She looked up at him, eyes glistening, and whispered, we were never meant to hate each other. They just wanted to keep the truth hidden. He nodded slowly, understanding now that both of them had been living under the weight of secrets they didn't create. Together, they decided to end it differently. Instead of running, they turned the files over to the authorities, exposing the corruption that had destroyed both their families. The story made headlines, but more importantly, it cleared the names of their fathers. In the quiet days that followed, they often met at the same cafe where he had once waited alone. This time he didn't watch the door with fear, he watched it with peace, knowing she would always walk through. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, she smiled softly. Do you ever think about how different things could have been if I wasn't scared that day? He reached for her hand and said, maybe we needed to be lost to find our way back. The years of silence, pain, and unanswered questions had finally led to truth and forgiveness. As they sat there, side by side, the world outside moved on, but for them, it finally felt still, honest, and complete.